Daredevil's back. We have Matt, Karen, and Foggy back. We have Kingpin. We have Bullseye back. Hell, we even have Josie back. I just can't imagine what else this show could bring back that would get me more excited. What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Anderson here, and this is Daredevil Born Again, Season 1, Episode 1, Heaven's Half Hour. So this was a show that I was a little excited to get into. I've heard mixed things about it. It seems pretty well reviewed on IMDb, so I don't really know for sure what I'm getting out of this, but I was just excited to get to see Matt Murdock, Kingpin, Karen, Foggy, all of them back. We'll talk about one of those characters in just a second. Yeah, just looking at the MCU as a whole right now, outside of Agatha all along, there really wasn't much to grip onto. So this was one that just captured my attention a bit, made me a little bit excited to see what are they going to do with this. Is it going to live up to what the Netflix show was? Is the story going to be good? Are these characters going to feel the same? And so far, I would say yes, to an extent. I think there is still more to come with Daredevil, and I am a little concerned that maybe we won't get him till more so the end of the season, based on the conversation that Matt and Fisk had in the diner, where essentially Fisk told him, hey, if you're going to go out and do your vigilante thing, there will be consequences. And it does feel like now that he's mayor, he could just easily say, Daredevil is Matt Murdock. Cops go arrest him, and he wouldn't be able to live in the city anymore. So it does make me concerned that Daredevil is not actually going to show up until later this season. Maybe even like the final 2 episodes, he finally suits back up, and then it's more of a season 2, because they do have a season 2, according to IMDb at least. So it's more so season 2 is when he fully returns as Daredevil. But hopefully not. Hopefully we get him soon-ish. But let's go ahead and talk about that opening scene, because I've thankfully managed to stay spoiler-free on this one. And yeah, kind of shocking that they just kill Foggy off like that. I wonder how the actor felt hearing that they were going to start Daredevil back up. He's thinking, yeah, cool, I had fun on that. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he was just like, please kill me off in the first episode so I don't have to do this again. But I do think it sets up well for Matt. You think about why he's not going to be Daredevil anymore. It would make sense losing a best friend like Foggy would be enough to push him to that point. Also, the fact that he tried to kill Bullseye in the process, which I will say, somebody's going to have to explain to me how he didn't die. You fall from a 2-3 story building onto your head, blood gushing out of it, you're dead. He's not superhuman. The only superhuman thing about him is his aiming accuracy. He's not super strong to the point where he can survive falling a couple stories onto his head with no protection on. But it makes sense that that night is the night that Matt decides to hang up the suit. But the opening scene is very well done. They try to recreate that one-shot feel in the bar, going up the stairs, going up onto the roof. There are some parts of it that looked pretty good, and I think they did a good job, for the most part, of hiding where there might have been cuts. But it wasn't quite the same, and I do think there were a couple times that CGI was pretty obvious that they were using CGI. And if they didn't use any CGI, well then something was really weird about a couple of those scenes, because I think looking at the fight that was started on the roof, from the moment whenever Daredevil lands to the first couple of hits, he was moving kind of like a Mortal Kombat character more than he was a real person. It wasn't until they panned down and panned back up that it looked like he was actually up there. But I still do think it was a very well done scene, very well shot. And I think the emotion was all really there. I think Charlie Cox, for that opening scene, really raw in his reaction to hearing Foggy's heart stop beating. Deborah as well, her reaction to Foggy dying, but then also hearing the body land behind her. There's something very real about that, because that's all she hears. And you could see the fear on her face to turn around and look, because in her mind, that could be Matt. She could have just lost 2 of her best friends. Maybe her only 2 best friends in the whole world. And you could just see the nervousness of her turning around to check and see whose body it was behind her. And there wasn't really relief, because obviously there is still the question of, did Matt just kill that guy? But there's so much about that scene that I think was just really well done. And it's a great setup for the episode, even though I do think killing Foggy is maybe done more so for shock value. I think about the shocking death that they had at the beginning of Secret Invasion, and obviously we saw how that all turned out. So I'm a little worried that maybe that was why that was done here, was just to shock the audience and be like, ooh, we're serious, guys. We're going to kill off a main character of this show. Ooh. And then in the end, it's not really going to mean anything. But at the very least, like I said, they do tie it into why Matt is no longer Daredevil. And then from there, it just sort of builds. And this whole thing with Fisk becoming mayor, obviously it was built up at the end of Echo. And I'm cautiously curious about what's going to happen. I say cautiously because it already feels like it's starting to lean into getting a little heavy-handed as far as the opinions of the people that are writing this show about our current political climate. I do think most of us can agree that yeah, politics these days are a little weird. They're definitely a lot more about popularity contests. They're not so much about what the government is actually doing to help for most people. But I will say, so far, it's been pretty one-sided as far as the political messaging here. When you think about terms they're using to describe Fisk, when you think about the people who are supporting Fisk, they are very stereotypical, which of course stereotypes are fine as long as they're about people that you hate, right? But I am worried because obviously setting this in a political climate where he's the mayor now, it does lend itself for them to make a lot of statements about what they think and how things are and about people who support the person that they don't like. And that's where I'm worried this could get bogged down a little bit. Hopefully not. I'm sure they will make some statements here and there, but I'd rather it just be some one-off lines or just a scene in every episode and not spending basically half the episode preaching to the audience about what you believe, because that's not what most people are here for. Most of us are here to watch Matt Murdock be Daredevil and fight the bad guys and win the day. But it does provide a different challenge for Matt because he's not really sure, can he trust him now? We did see at the end of Echo, Maya did something to Fisk's mind. This could be some of the result of that. Maybe he is starting to change a little bit. I don't know how I'd feel if they did do that with him because Fisk is such an entertaining villain to have, and Vincent D'Onofrio plays him so well whenever he goes into those psychotic rages. So I don't know if I want to lose that version of Fisk, but it would be interesting to see Fisk actually trying to turn over a new leaf. It might be similar to, I feel like there was a Spider-Man story. Yeah, actually, it was Spider-Man 2, the game, with Mysterio. His assistants, they're trying to commit a crime and frame him in the process, so they're trying to make it seem like he's going back to his villainy. So there could be something similar where maybe somebody that thinks Fisk does belong in jail try to frame him for something or try to bring out the monstrous side of him, or even somebody that just likes him better as a crime lord. Maybe one of his former followers is just like, no, we want Kingpin back, so they try to get that side of him back out. So there could be some interesting things done here with the idea that Fisk is trying to turn over a new leaf here as he's becoming mayor. But while I do like the concept that they're bringing up and the idea that Matt is going to have to try to work within the confines of the law because Fisk basically warned him about stepping out of line and becoming a vigilante again, I don't want to see too much of that. I do want to get back to some of the superheroing, some of the action. I think this is a good build-up. I like the fact, too, that most of these episodes are pretty decently long. I've definitely experienced some disappointment with some of the other Marvel shows where it feels like there's not enough of an idea, so they have 8 or 9 episodes, but they're 40 to 30 minutes long, so we're not really getting much story. Most of these are 45 minutes or above. This first one was about an hour. So they're very clearly taking their time to build up the story, and I like that idea. I just hope there is enough story to use all of that time. But I think the big thing is there are moments where they're allowed to be a bit quieter. There's allowed to be some contemplation from the characters. It doesn't always have to be moving because you've got that time to let some of the emotions sit. And that's not something Marvel has been doing recently. So hopefully that continues. Hopefully we get more of that, and hopefully this show is good because I'm optimistic about this one and I don't want to be proven wrong. But the MCU has been disappointing me a lot lately, so maybe I shouldn't get too optimistic. But I think that's about it for this one, so on to episode 2. I'll see you there. And now episode 2, Optics. So yeah, the scene at the end definitely gets me excited to see a bit more of that throughout this season. Very brutal, and fittingly so, I think, based on the character we know Matt is, and even just that scream at the end, it's so raw. And it feels a lot like the Matt that we had in the Netflix show that was trying to suppress this darker side, that wanted to get out and wanted to do all of this damage to people that were hurting all these innocents. So I'm glad we're kind of seeming to go back to that a little bit. I don't know how much they're going to approach that topic, because I know in season 3, I'm pretty sure there was this back and forth in his own mind where there was a Fisk imagination that was trying to convince him to let that side of himself out. So if we're going to do more of that, kind of be cool to see, especially after what happened with Foggy. I think that really sets up for a good dilemma for him to deal with internally. But as far as the whole Hector thing, I think we're still missing some context as far as what the cops were doing to the one guy, like why they were attacking him. Obviously, Hector's just taking the brunt of it because one of the cops got killed. To be fair, it is kind of his fault. Like, I know the cops were beating on an innocent guy and they were trying to beat on him as well, but there's no way he didn't hear the train coming, and he did sidestep the guy and let him fall past him. I'm not saying he should take the hit, but also if he is a good guy and he's not trying to kill anybody and he hears the train coming, he should be tackling the guy away from it or punching him, not sidestepping him and letting him run into the train. But I will say it was kind of funny when the whole thing started and he starts beating up on these two guys. There was a thought in my mind of, okay, so we saw another vigilante in the first episode. This guy seems like he might just be a vigilante. That's the sense that I'm getting. So it makes sense that he gets caught, and then this kind of builds up for the situation that Matt finds himself in, where Fisk is trying to cut down on vigilanteism while Matt's defending a vigilante who ends up getting a guy killed. But it was kind of funny because when all of that ends and the guy dies, the guy suddenly pulls out his badge, NYPD! And at the time I'm thinking, yeah, because that's how that works. The cops would not identify themselves to get the guy to back off. But then we find out later, no, these guys are straight up corrupt. They were beating on this innocent dude, seemingly innocent. We still don't know everything about him. But yeah, they're not beating him up as undercover cops or anything like that. They're just beating him up. But it is weird that they didn't try to keep this guy away by flashing the badges sooner. Because even if they are corrupt, I feel like they could have gone up to Hector and been like, hey, listen, undercover here, we're dealing with this guy, so just back off. But they don't even do that. They just start beating up on the guy that's trying to protect this other dude. But it's something that I think has to happen for the story to get going, so I'll suspend my disbelief for it. But yeah, there are a lot of moving pieces that I find very interesting. Fisk and his campaign, one of the things he's dealing with is Vanessa not being around because they're kind of on the rocks. He did mention a guy in the first episode. I think his name is Adam. I'm assuming that's somebody that she cheated on him with while he was out there recovering. So there is a rift between them. Obviously, we see that rift is hurting in some of the more traditional voters that like to see the leader of their city as a family man. So if he's married, they want to see his wife too. So it's something that he's working on. Very interesting that it turns out to be Heather, I think is her name. I'm really bad at names, so I'm working on it. I think Heather is the therapist that Matt's seeing right now. So that's interesting. Obviously, Fisk gets approached by Ben Ulrich's daughter, who I'm pretty sure, if I remember right, he had Ulrich killed in the first season of Daredevil. So there's that connection there. She seems like the young go-getter reporter that's not going to let a story die. She's going to push it to the end. So he's going to be having to deal with her as well. Also random, but while Heather was doing the book signings, which is where Fisk's, I don't even know what to call him, I guess assistant. I'm guessing that's how he reached out to her to make it private. But there was a kid that was there that was talking about he needed her help with something. And something seemed off about him. I don't know if that's going to come back later or if that's just a random scene thrown in there to flesh out the world a little bit. But yeah, that scene felt very odd to have in there, and then we just don't talk about it again after that. But like I said, there are a lot of moving pieces. They all seem somewhat interconnected, which I think is good because it doesn't make it feel like its own separate thing. Fisk and Matt's worlds are colliding in their own different ways that they're not even really aware of. And I think that helps because when you start to get toward the end of the season, a lot of these stories are already connected in a way where you can streamline it into one story and make it part of one big story. So it's very clever from the writers, but I'm assuming now we're going to focus on the trial for Hector. I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing next episode is going to be about trying to get this, I've already forgotten his name, but the guy that the cops are beating up on that Matt saves at the end of this episode, I'm assuming it's going to be about trying to get him to show up as a witness to defend Hector. And I honestly don't know which way the trial is going to go. I could see it going either way, where they do find him not guilty, they get him back out on the streets, or he ends up being found guilty and Matt, seeing the injustice there, decides, no, I'm going to break him out because he doesn't deserve this because of these corrupt cops. But I think it was nice to see, especially after the first scene with the judge where he basically just said no bail because he killed a cop. I was worried they were going to do the thing where the judge is also kind of corrupt as well and he's in with the police. But then when they find out about White Tiger, he does at least see fairly there and sees that that past that he has nothing to do with what happened in the subway station that night. So that's good because I didn't want the judge to be a one-note character, and I feel like that shows he's not. He will be harsh in his judgment, but I don't think he's going to be corrupt in the end. At least I hope not. But I think that's about it for this one. I'm not really sure if Matt killed the guys at the end or if he just severely injured him and knocked him out. I will say he did bash that guy's head against the fridge a couple times and then threw him onto the ground face first. If that guy died from that, and yet Bullseye survived a 2 or 3 story drop onto his head, I'm going to have to call bullshit that this guy's dead and Bullseye is not. But on to the 3rd episode. I'll see you guys there. And finally, episode 3, The Hollow of His Hand. What? We just spent this whole episode, and most of last episode too, we spent most of these 2 episodes trying to get through this trial for Hector, trying to prove him innocent, watching Matt struggle, do something way off the walls and expose him as the White Tiger, and then he just gets killed off at the end of this episode. What? Now, obviously, I did know that the Punisher is in this series. It's one of the few things I got spoiled on. I don't know if this is actually going to be him, because it doesn't really make sense. It doesn't seem like his style to kill a vigilante that was fighting against a couple of corrupt cops. I know I've seen the cops with the little Punisher tattoos on and stuff, so I don't know if maybe they've taken on his mantle as their own mindset of, yeah, we're gonna be the Punisher. We're going to take our own justice to the streets just like he did. And then maybe he'll hear about this and get real pissed off and come back to kill them to keep them from using his identity or his, I don't even know what to call it. It's not really a superhero identity. Namesake, I suppose? I don't know. But it just feels weird that he would kill the White Tiger because he got off clean. I don't think he'd be working for Fisk either, because that definitely doesn't seem like his MO. So we'll see. They didn't show the face of the guy who shot him, so I'm up in the air whether or not it's actually him. But it does sort of blow my mind. I thought Hector was maybe going to stick around for a little bit, possibly be the focal point as far as Fisk's campaign and what he's trying to do, trying to get all the vigilantes off the street. Because obviously we've seen Matt is okay with putting away Daredevil, but Hector did not seem to want to give up being the White Tiger. So it kind of felt like he could be more so the focal point for Fisk's campaign against vigilantes until Matt wants to put Daredevil back in action. But as far as the trial itself, I mean, it played out pretty much how I was kind of expecting. Outside of, I didn't expect all of the verdicts to be not guilty. I thought it was going to be one of those where they clear him of the murder charges, which is good, but they still find him guilty of manslaughter. And it is funny that we're not really talking about the fact that, again, I do think he is partially responsible. He said the guy slipped. He didn't slip. You dodged his attack and let him run past you, even though you should know that the train is coming right behind you. We're just not really talking about that. We're acting like, no, guys. Hector's right. He did just slip and fall into the train. That's what happened. It makes me think of Zenkichi from Persona 5 Strikers. He'd show up when some asshole was threatening violence. Cut away, you hear a bunch of punching sounds. Cut back, the guy's flat on the floor. Be like, ooh, looks like you slipped and fell there. Is that what they're going for here? A bit of comedy? I don't know. It's weird. But I will say, whenever Torres showed up at the courthouse because they managed to trick Powell and get him there without him knowing, that was the point where I realized, okay, so we're doing the thing where they win the day, they get him to the courthouse, but then he's not going to be courageous enough to step up and tell the truth. Because it was way too early in the episode to have them win the trial at that point, so it made sense that he was going to lie on the stand. So like I said, a little predictable. The stuff with Kingpin, I'm not really sure where a lot of it's going. We see there are all these criminals that are trying to take over the spot that he left now that he's mayor. He's trying to essentially get rid of that side of his former business because it doesn't look good for what he's trying to do as mayor. But of course, Vanessa, she ran the business. She liked how she ran the business. She thinks she was doing a really good job. And in her mind, Fisk trying to shut that down is almost disrespecting what she did before. So it's forming this kind of interesting rift between the two of them, because so much of the Netflix series was about Fisk trying to win her over, trying to be with her. That was a lot of his story. So it is interesting now that he has her, and he's had her for a while, now there's the disconnect happening. And it does feel like the natural progression for where their story would go, especially after we figured out she's almost as depraved as he is in some ways. It does kind of work that she is trying to do her own thing and is pissed off at the fact that he's trying to take that away from her. So it's forming a bit of an interesting dilemma there. I don't know how much that's going to get focused on now that it does feel like Fisk's story is about to focus more on his campaign to shut down on vigilantism as mayor. So we might be taking focus away from Vanessa for now. But I like the setup for that, and I hope they have something interesting planned for the rest of the season there. Don't think there's anything else to really talk about. Looking forward to seeing what's going to come next, especially getting to see the Punisher again. He was definitely one of my favorite parts about the Netflix shows, and even his show was still pretty good. But I'm looking forward to that. But until then, let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What were your thoughts on these 3 episodes? Let me know. We can talk about and discuss all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Daredevil Born Again reviews. Also check out the channel. We have a lot of other reviews on there, so check those out if you have time. But until next time, I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll talk to you all later. Peace out.